Godfather, gay. It's like, gay? What are you talking about? I said, who is that idiot? And then he turns the phone around, and it was...
I've never had a question like this before. So you ask if I have any experience with goblins or any strange stories about the ocean. I actually do have a strange story about the ocean. Maybe two short stories about the ocean. Goblins, no.
I can't say that I do.
I'm very interested in what you say here about University of New Orleans having a problem with goblins. I would really love to hear about that. Anyway, one of the coolest things I ever did in training, I had to fly out to San Diego. I had to get on a submarine. We went out to sea. We went down under the water, which was totally creepy. And then we went all the way up the west coast of the United States until we were off the coast of Oregon. All that the sailors were told was that they had a VIP visitor on board, which was me, which kind of made me laugh. I think that because I was in civilian clothes, they just assumed that I was a CIA officer, but they had no idea what I was doing on this submarine. So off the coast of Oregon, we came up above the surface of the water. They opened the hatch. I threw a raft out. I climbed out of the hatch. I got into the raft. I pushed off. They went back down under the water, and then God knows where they went. I don't know where in the world they went. I had to row on this raft, this inflatable raft, to the Oregon coast, pull out a knife, stab the raft, then bury it with this folding shovel that I had. Then I had to make my way to a predetermined spot to pick up a secret encoded message.
And they will spend millions of dollars to defeat you. And they're very successful. Well, that might be great for Israel, but I'm not an Israeli citizen. I want what's great for America. And the system that we have now, it's just not working out. Also, and I don't mean this rhetorically, I mean it literally. Why does AIPAC not have to register as a foreign agent? It's a mystery to me, and literally no one has ever offered up a believable reason. I do, and I'll tell you why. Well, besides the fact that the neoconservatives are reestablishing themselves, I've spoken over the last 2 weeks with some of the most important thinkers. I said, and excuse me, you may even want to edit this out. I said to one of the guards, I said, I've eaten ass that tasted better than this. That's how bad it was. Sorry.
I'm leaving that in.
I've never actually said that out loud before. Yeah.
Well, we have a special guest that's going to come to the party tonight.
And then Joe Biden comes.
He was vice president at the time. So Biden comes, and Biden was exactly the opposite of Kerry. Biden's standing at the entrance to the backyard, or to the side yard. He goes, hey, like this. Everybody's like, hey, Mr. Vice President, good to see you. So he comes down and starts shaking hands with everybody, one at a time. Great eye contact. Hi, Joe Biden. Tell me your name again. You know, that kind of thing. I said, Mr. Vice President, we've met a number of times. You probably don't remember me. I'm from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and my dad was best friends with Angelo Sands. He goes, Angelo Sands from 7th grade? And I said, yeah, your best friend from 7th grade. He says, I do remember you. We talked about Angelo's a taxi driver in Las Vegas now. I said, that's right. He is a taxi driver. Great memory. I said, that conversation was 15 years ago. And then he says to the guy next to me, I remember you.
I don't like you.
And he looks at Kerry, and Kerry just is like, I don't like him either.
And they walk away.
I said to the guy, what the fuck?
He said, Biden has hated me since I told him in a memo that we should pull out of Afghanistan. And I said, sweethearts these guys are. And he's like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Right? People's children don't have shoes. They don't have enough to eat.
But man, they've got 93% of the world's heroin.
We go to Kandahar, and it was just a day of meetings in the base there. And I met, the Afghans.
They're all liars and criminals and,
What the message wanted me to do, what my instructions were, and then go do the thing. That was one thing. The other thing is there's a brackish swamp that comes in off the ocean right on the North Carolina-Virginia border. It's called the Great Dismal Swamp because it's giant and it's dismal and it's full of critters, which I hate. Sure enough, in the same training, they drove us out into the old Dismal Swamp, parked the 4x4s. My instructor points out there. You see out there in the distance, there's an island? I'm like, yeah, it's like a quarter of a mile out into the swamp. He's like, yeah, you're going to swim out there and you're going to find a message. You got to decode the message and then do what it says. I said, it's a fucking swamp. He's like, yep, good luck. Well, all my life, I've had this irrational fear of things that drink my blood. I hate mosquitoes. I hate ticks, all the stuff that drinks your blood. It freaks me out ever since I was a little kid. I'm perfectly happy to get in a gunfight with somebody, but I
hate mosquitoes.
Take off my clothes.
I'm in my underwear.
I swim quarter of a mile out to this friggin' island in the swamp. I'm covered in leeches, and they're all drinking my blood. I'm like, should I pull the leeches off? I got to get back in the water and swim all the way back. I'm going to get more leeches on me. So I read the letter, I decode it. It tells me to swim back, get in the Jeep, and then go, do my operational act. I swim back there. I'm covered in leeches. Everybody was covered in leeches at the end of this thing. So the instructors had lighters, and they were lighting the leeches, and the leeches would fall off when you burn them. I had these welts all over my body from where the leeches were drinking my blood. It was disgusting. And frankly, it was unnecessary because I never, ever had to use either one of those skills at any time at the CIA.
We'll add that an investment in a good bulletproof vest is always wise as well. And
oh my gosh, what do you have that just sitting in your house? What's that doing right next to you?
I gave a speech the other day, and it was so uncomfortable. I took it off when I got home. But after Charlie Kirk and after these revelations from WikiLeaks about what the CIA does and what the FBI does and what the Israelis do, they kill everybody who they don't like. So, better safe than sorry.
I mean, let me ask you, without getting too graphic, but
on the issue of Russian studies, here in Washington, the chairman of the history department at American University and a Russia expert and the founder of the nuclear studies program, for example. And every one of these experts that I speak with say the same thing, which is remarkable. They say it independently of one another. And that is that the war is essentially over. Russia has won. Right? The Russians, although they're advancing slowly, they're advancing. And every day they lose a little bit more territory. And so it's not in Russia's interest to end this war. Why would they want to? They're winning. Well, the only way that you can force the Russians to the negotiating table is to push them back. And the only way to push them back is to use American intelligence, British intelligence, German intelligence, and NATO hardware that you're giving to the Ukrainians to push them back. If you can't push them back physically on the ground, which the Ukrainians cannot, and NATO, of course, can't provide troops because then that would be a declaration of war, you have them do something that is almost as dangerous, and that is to strike Russian infrastructure, especially oil and gas infrastructure. I think that would be a catastrophic error on the part of the West because it ratchets up the level of violence in this war. And I think that we should...
Narco traffickers.
I said, I want to go out into the fields. I want to talk to a poppy farmer. He said, let's go. We had a couple of Jeeps. We had security. We had a translator. I don't speak Pashto. So we go out into the fields. And I mean...
As far as your eyes can possibly see, it's just an ocean of heroin poppy.
So... sure enough, we see a poppy farmer, and we go up to him. Salaam alaikum. I said, why would you grow poppy when you can grow vegetables with 2 growing seasons, like tomatoes or onions or pomegranates? He goes like this. He goes,
The Americans told me in 2001.
Right? They believe it in their hearts, number one. Number two, I think they actually have a shorter term view of the world. As Americans, we have an incredibly short term view of the world.
Right.
That's why we keep losing these wars.
Right.
Right? I think the Israeli worldview is even shorter. They don't care who's elected president next. They'll deal with that when it comes. Right now, they've got a war to fight. They have an Iranian government to overthrow. And as soon as they overthrow it, then they'll deal with the next election. But that's very short-sighted.
That's shocking.
Mm-hmm. You and I talked about something last time I was here that I think is important. We talked about AIPAC and the incredible political acumen that AIPAC exhibits. They have this down to a science. If you stray even one iota from the pro-Israel political line, they will primary you. Right? They'll run somebody against you. If you're 99% pro-Israel, they're going to run somebody against you that's 100% pro-Israel. Right. Well, that strategy is not working out very well. And I'll give you an example.
Massey?
Massey's one. There was a congressional race in New Jersey recently where an incumbent, there's been some redistricting, an incumbent congressman who's pro-Israel was running in this race. There were a bunch of other Democrats running against him. And there was one woman, her name escapes me now, who is not pro-Israel. AIPAC supported a third Democrat who was like a little more pro-Israel than the incumbent. And instead the pro-Palestinian one won because the pro-Israel vote was split. And I think that we should then expect to see some sort of a Russian response. You know, during the Vietnam War, one of the complaints that the United States had was that the Russians and the Chinese were arming and funding the North Vietnamese. Well, of course they were, because they wanted to push the United States out. Well, now, if we continue to arm and fund the Ukrainians, the Russians are going to make it worse for Ukraine and worse for us. The only way to go is up in escalation, and that's a very bad thing.
I think one of the realistic signs of what's because with the Trump administration, you cannot find out what is the policy, what would be the policy in the next 24 hours.
Right.
But when it comes to Russians, we have seen some sort of consistency in their sort of message. And that is hugely problematic when it comes to the latest escalations, because we see Putin just warning the United States and the West with, shocking and staggering response from Russia to any attack on deep into the Russian soil. But Medvedev also came out and said, the United States is our enemy.
Yes.
The main outcome of these new sanctions, that shows you, for those of you who are delusional about what's going on between the United States and Russia, you have to understand it.
If I told them where the Arabs were, I could grow all the poppy I wanted.
And I said, what American told you could grow poppy? And the security guy says, meeting over, and he grabs me by the arm and he physically pulls me back to the Jeep.
In a hotel, if they start banging on your door, rip off your clothes and jump into bed, both of you, because you're going to be gay for a minute. So when they finally break down the door, they're like, oh shit, we thought you were meeting because we thought you were CIA, and you're, oh my God, no, you're just gay. And then everybody's okay.
In a district in Pittsburgh, there's a possibility of that happening in a district in St. Louis. And I think that maybe they got a little too big for their britches.
Do you see this new guy who's running for governor of Florida? This fishback guy, young kid. I think Tucker did have him on his podcast.
Yeah, Tucker had him on. I'm smiling because on my own podcast one morning, somebody wrote in the chat, John, what do you think about this guy Fishback in Florida? And I said, oh, yeah. I said, I know that guy. I said, Tucker had him on. And I think that his position on Israel is very well considered. And it's sort of emblematic of how this new generation of political candidates is rethinking the U.S.-Israel relationship. Within minutes, I see on X, John Kiriakou endorses Fishback for governor.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, no, I didn't.
There are no tactics taught to help you ingratiate yourself with potential targets. You either have it in your gut or you don't. So a normal asset meeting, you go through the Mad Minute. Were you followed here? Were you followed home last time? Did you have any problems, any concerns during the course of the month? And let's meet 1 month from tonight, at 8 o'clock at such and such a hotel. Then you sit down, you have a coffee. How was your month?
The enemy is the United States. These are not positive signs.
No. I'm one of these people, Nima, who is eternally optimistic. And even I am not seeing any reasons for optimism. One thing about Medvedev, too, I was just talking to a Russian about him yesterday. Here in the West, so many people think Medvedev is a loose cannon. He's kind of crazy. He's always on Twitter. He does that on purpose. Medvedev is the one who puts the Russian policy position out there in the public for the West to read. He's not just, sitting on the edge of his bed, just, tweeting on his phone. This is what his instructions are. He's the one that's out there floating Russian policy positions while Putin acts more presidential.
Snowfall.
Absolutely fantastic, wonderful, and well-written series. If you didn't see Snowfall on AMC when it was first making its run, it's now on Hulu. Every episode is on Hulu. And it is about how...
It was about how crack cocaine was invented.
First in Oakland, California, in the early 1980s, and how it was picked up by an up-and-coming coke dealer, coke importer in Los Angeles, but with the help of the CIA. The CIA
was providing the coke
so that it could be sold in Los Angeles, and they
took the money and used it to buy weapons for the Contra rebels.
You know, it's funny to me, when Snowfall came out, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, the CIA denied that this is not true. This is just Hollywood make-believe. It's like, you guys forgot that Gary Webb proved all this was true. And then
committed suicide.
CIA, it's like there's so much turnover in the jobs, they don't remember the lies that they told 3 years ago, and then anyway, they contradict themselves. So if you want a TV recommendation and you have Hulu, Snowfall. You're going to binge the heck out of it. It's fantastic. And what the Israelis did was they got the cell phone numbers of literally every Iranian nuclear scientist. And they had these these Iranian Jews call on their cell phones, call the scientists and say, listen,
you're going to die tomorrow.
Right? We're going to kill you tomorrow. You have no hope.
You're going to die.
Just accept it. Or you can defect to us right now. And they're like, fuck you. And they hang up the phone. Then they call the wives and say, listen, we're going to
kill your husband tomorrow.
So tell him this is his only chance. He's going to die tomorrow. And what they ended up doing is just taking out the entire block of apartment buildings.
They killed 14 nuclear scientists.
That devastates the entire program.